Hello, everyone. I'm not actually sure anyone's going to be joining the live stream today just because it's a weird hour, weird time, and kind of last minute. This is mostly so I can have a video display of a reflection for COP27's day one. I have a friend that'll be joining me in a few moments. Give me one sec. I might have to hop on Instagram on my laptop. So I just want to do a quick reflection on the first day of COP27. I am really, really excited about all of this. I think there was a lot of really great points made yesterday. And just from what I'm already seeing about today, there's already so much great stuff going on. So I'm really excited. I'm almost positive that a lot of good is going to come from this. But just trying to get my live buddy to be able to get on. Let's see. Okay. I think I'm going to start by outlining some of the most important people that we saw at COP27 yesterday, starting with, of course, opening remarks to the press was done by the Environmental Minister of Egypt, Environment Minister Fuad. And then, of course, we had the transition of powers, which happens every year. And I think it was done almost expertly with COP26 President Alok Sharma, and then to COP27 President and the Egyptian Foreign Affairs Minister, Salman Shakri. Oh my gosh, here she is. And those on Instagram will not be able to see Lexy, unfortunately. But can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay, so I'm glad to hear it. And this is going live both on YouTube and Facebook. I couldn't get my Miss Nebraska Earth page, Instagram page to work out here, and I am very frustrated with that, but we're going to keep on rolling. So I was just giving a quick rundown on some of the important people that we saw yesterday, including the transition of powers that happened from President Alok Sharma to President and Egyptian Foreign Affairs Minister Salman Shakri. Then you, of course, have the Executive Secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, Simon Style, the Egyptian President, President El-Sisi. Ethiopian Prime Minister actually made a really big splash yesterday. He joined the leadership conference. Abiy Ahmed was there, which is kind of revolutionary. We got to see Ethiopia be represented, so everyone was super excited about that, especially in the leadership conference. Egyptian Prime Minister Madbouli was there. Greenpeace's delegation head Yeb Sano was there. So Greenpeace this year, and I think in COP26, 25, and 24 as well, gets to have a delegation head who gets to speak and be there and be president. So that's always really cool that, and especially with this year's focus on getting more privatized and public industry involved in COP27, I think having the Greenpeace delegation head be able to give a major speech and be able to speak very openly during the course of events on the first day was a really big deal, in my opinion. I haven't watched COP27 live ever before, so I don't know if that's typical, but I just thought that was a really cool thing that happened. And then wrapping up here with some European faces, Britain's Prime Minister, the second one in a few months, Prime Minister Sunak, and then French President Macron also gave statements yesterday. So is there anything you want to add before we hop into COP27, Lexy?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. I think you've got it covered.
Okay, perfect. So I want to start with the transition of power from COP26 to COP27. President Sharma and Shakri. I am going to keep calling them presidents because I think it's a really important role. And one of the things that came up was that we are not currently, as a global society, on track to meet the 1.5 degrees warming goal. So we want to keep under that 1.5 degrees Celsius, obviously. And in former President Sharma's speech, he mentioned that we are currently not going to meet these goals if we don't change a lot and very quick, and emphasize unity and the climate finance plan. So, and this was a kind of a common occurrence, I think, like in my opinion. But I want to know, like, because you, Lexy, are not like obsessed with this stuff as much as I am. Like, this is my life. This is what I go to school for. So I want to hear like what your thoughts on the current climate finance plan. It's a $100 billion pledge that so far we haven't been honoring. It's supposed to be $100 billion every year from the major world powers. And so far we haven't met it. What are some of your thoughts and considerations about that?
I want to say, I've briefly looked over all the information you initially asked me to come on. Like you said, I'm not super into it, but it's almost horrifying that we have so many of these big power play countries, both historically, culturally, and, all that good stuff. And yet we are not meeting that goal, and we are not putting forth the promises. And growing up, when you make a promise, you don't break it. And when it comes to something like the Earth, where you get one shot, and if you mess it up, unfortunately, it dooms us all, it's really unsettling, I feel, is the good word for that.
Yeah, I think especially because one of the other speeches that was given was from the new Prime Minister Sunak, who was calling for every country to stick to their climate promises and their commitments and their pledges, while his own country hasn't always been the best at that. So I'm hoping that with Prime Minister Sunak, he is very new. From what he stated yesterday, I'm hoping that he is going to stay committed and make a push for Britain to lead the world in hitting these goals and making these commitments and sticking to them. One of the things he mentioned, and I still don't know how I feel about it, was the Ukraine-Russia situation. And he's like, yeah, it's like harder than ever. Like, this is a huge setback for green energy, but it also reminds us that our reliance on fossil fuels is like so bad. And while I understand the point of the speech he made, it also kind of felt like it was in bad taste a little bit. I just saying like that the Ukraine situation is setting us back, I think, is what left a bad taste in my mouth. I totally agree that it does prove that we need to get off our fossil fuel reliance, because like the Russia situation, like this being dependent on Russian oil is like a huge problem when all of a sudden you want to completely boycott Russia and completely cut Russia off because they're doing awful things. How do you do that when you're reliant on them? So I think he made a good point, but at the same time, icky point.
It's the wording for me, the kind of the, like you were saying, the set us back language, as opposed to maybe this wasn't an ideal, I mean, obviously it's not an ideal situation. It's a freaking, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is, but that term of setback, and I always hear it used in such a negative connotation, as opposed to this isn't our goal right now. We're not meeting our goal right now, but we don't have to say setback in that sense, because it almost sounds a little blamey. Like when you're in trouble at school and they're like, oh, your grades aren't good enough, you're falling back, you're set back now.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's just like better ways he could have framed it. Like, this is a great opportunity. This just proves that even if like you don't believe in climate change, because that was another big thing, is like Shokri highlighted that like the political polarization surrounding climate change has set us back a lot. And I think it's just absolutely an opportunity. Like, the Ukraine situation is an opportunity to prove like, hey, there is real benefit to ending reliance on fossil fuels, even if you don't believe in climate change. So I think it could have been, and I know he did kind of make that point, but I think stating it that way more clearly would have been preferable. And I just don't know. It just like really hurt my soul to hear him call like the Ukraine situation a setback. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that's not how he meant it. I'm praying that he meant the best of everything. So then that leaves us. Oh, also Yeb Sano from Greenpeace also called for unity. A lot of focus on hitting climate commitments. I have that like added in my notes with a little star. I'm like, am I going to talk about Greenpeace? Yeah, I am. Love Greenpeace. Go Greenpeace. But I want to talk a little bit about President Chakri's speech to open COP27. So he highlighted a lot of the climate incidents and some of the fallback we've been seeing. And using an article I found online, because they had the exact quote that I was like looking for as well. I was so happy. He said, "We have witnessed during this year painful events in Pakistan, the African continent, and various parts of Europe and America. All these events and the destruction and impact represent a lesson to be learned and alarm all over the planet, to invite us to more precaution and to act quickly to take all necessary measures as per our commitments and pledges." I thought that was a really poignant part of everything going on. And it happened so early in the morning. I think this happened around like 10 in the morning. Great, like, how can he even be thinking like so clearly? I don't know. I was like amazed. And it's just like, because one of the topics this during COP27 this year is a focus on trying to move both into adaptations to climate change as well as like keep trying for mitigation. I thought it was super interesting that he chose to create such a focus so early on the adaptation side of things. And it's like later he's talking about polarization in politics and how that has hurt our climate goals. And it feels really like there's a tie there to me. Like we're not on track to meet our climate goal. Great, awful, however you want to put it. But just like the quick turnaround into using climate financing to apply to adaptations rather than only precautionary measures. I want to kind of dig into that. I want to know what people are thinking about that. And when this gets posted as a video afterwards, I also want to hear your thoughts in the comments, because I don't know, I was really shocked and I felt very estranged almost. So I want to hear some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's the word? Something on my words now. The making everything very us versus them, in a sense of, we have the people like us who are very environmentally focused, and then we have the people who maybe haven't had the resources, if we want to put it nicely, to be made aware of just how bad the issue is. I don't think it was until I met you that I realized just how bad things were becoming. And usually I say all the good stuff, but it's not good stuff. But, it's at work recently. I just happened to be getting ready to start a shift, and my coworker was talking about politics, and I had to say, hey, can we please not? That's not workplace appropriate. It's the same conversation here, in the sense of, why are we politicizing the planet? Because, civilizations that come and they go. Look at Rome. It fell. It's still a great go, but like Rome isn't Rome anymore. And someday, scary as it may sound, all these great England, the US, we will fall too someday. And a new civilization will rise, a new culture will come. And it's important to preserve everything. We should all be in agreement on, let's protect the planet we have, because it's given so much to us. None of us would be alive without the planet, from the very basic bare bones of it all. So why are we so heavily making it only liberals believe in climate stuff, or like anybody who leans conservative doesn't believe in this? Why isn't it just let's educate each other. That's kind of what I'm looking for here.
And I think something that's really important to note here, that I'm very happy about, is like Prime Minister Sunak is from the UK's Conservative Party. Actually, major players are part of their country's conservative parties. There's probably, I feel like globally, there's more of a consensus that we need to protect our planet. And I'm always very happy to see that. I could be wrong. Other people like from other countries are going to be like, no, that's not true. But just from what I was seeing at COP27, it seems like we're having more cohesiveness. So I'm really excited to see that. It seems like a lot of people are on the same page, and I hope to see that continue. I think one of the things that got added or got proposed, let's say, yesterday was during the UN Climate Convention their parties agreed to introduce the loss and damage funding as an agenda item. What this would essentially do is it states, because Western nations are predominantly responsible for climate change, we have the largest emissions rates, and just generally like wealthier nations have larger emissions rates. So it's wealthier nations in general. However, a lot of non-Western and a lot of the, how do I want to put it? Because it's not just quote unquote developing nations, it's just nations that are under that like 50% wealth bracket, like bottom 50 versus top 50, I guess. Because I think it's the top 10 wealthiest nations are responsible for the majority of climate change, but the bottom 50 are experiencing the most damage, whether it be from like hurricanes that are catalyzed by climate change, or just extreme weather events in general, droughts, thunderstorms, etc. Essentially, what this new plan is stating is that those extremely wealthy nations that are at the most fault for carbon emissions are going to be the ones paying for the adaptations and the rebuilding in nations that cannot afford to do so. All that we have right now is that the parties have agreed to put it on the agenda. One of my fears is that because there are, I believe, 3 wealthy nations, not including Germany, that can essentially say, yeah, no, we're not doing that. I'm very worried that this is going to be taken off, but I also think it's a very important point to be made. And again, that's like something I would love to hear more opinions about, whether it's like in the comments of when this video is posted or from you, Lexy, just the idea of those responsible paying for the damage. Like, are we thinking that's a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like, in America, we're one of the most responsible countries in the world.
I think it would help if we approached it, especially in, I don't want to be rude towards my own country here, but I feel like there's this general vibe with the rest of the world where Americans are very sensitive and sort of, it takes a little sweet talking to get the point across. And I feel like if we could approach it as gently as you can in a situation like this of, hey, I don't think the average person realizes how much carbon emissions we're putting off. You know, I saw a post, when was it, the other day, comparing the impact of one of those classic New York City traffic jams, or insert any city here, versus like one of those public transportation buses, where one bus can significantly decrease the emissions. Or if you are walking or riding a bike instead of taking your car. So if we could approach it in a way that encourages people, and in my town, we just got those, I think they're called ride shares, where you can rent a bicycle for free as long as you return it back to the station after a few hours. We have those now, and I'm hoping, I haven't seen data released yet on if it's helping or not, but I'm hoping it's helping. if we do more things like that, especially in bigger countries like America or England, for example, I always default to England. I know so much about them too. If we default in these bigger countries, especially areas where maybe there's high amounts of tourists, because you can still get your money from the tourism, but on the same token, you can protect the earth and maybe decrease emissions. Instead of having everybody drive separately, invest in more public transportation and safe public transportation. Especially in my city, this huge stigma about taking the public buses because you never know who will get on. But it's not necessarily danger, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that you mentioned the bikes. When I was living in DC, granted, it was only like a 15-minute walk to the Capitol building every day, but I used those bikes constantly. It was so much fun. I love those things. It is going to help, I promise. Because I feel like there were a few days that I really wanted to Uber, and instead I got on one of those bikes and I'm like,
Yeah, my whole thing is my like little side hobby here is I pet sit, and if I don't have to get a ride to the one cat I babysit, he lives 20 minutes walking from me. It's not a bad walk at all. It's just, you know, sometimes it gets dark early and you don't want to be out past dark when you're a girl. But it's if I don't have to get a
yeah.
ride to go see that cat for the couple of minutes I'm going to go see him, I'll walk it. And it's a nice little walk. When I want to see my friends, we all walk to meet each other. And it's amazing because I find when you walk and when you, especially in more historical towns like my own, you never know what cool thing you'll run into or what wild thing you'll see. Like there's been times where there is a chipmunk this close to my body and I'm just like, whoa, look at you. I won't have that experience if you are in some sort of vehicle.
Oh my gosh, I love like the little things that make walking and all of that worth it, especially living in bigger cities. Like I live in Des Moines. I can't walk anywhere. There's like, it's not feasible. Everything's 20 minutes away. It's awful.
Yeah.
But I am gonna like, because I know you need to go and I feel like that was the end of what I had to say. So I'm going to wrap up with letting everyone know if you're watching this video later, I'm also going to be doing a live with Gianna Cloris that is focused on giving two sides of an environmental controversy. I am really hoping that people like that because it's something we were talking about earlier, like it's always the us versus them, and I want to give more perspective to a lot of these things. So I hope people will join me for that tomorrow. And I want to quickly shout out Lexy Hearn for hopping on this very last minute because I was aiming to have some people from Climate Reality do it. They couldn't. So I was like, Lexy, I need you. And she hopped on with no problem. Love her. Very iconic. So feel free to check out her page. And it's at Alexandria Hearn, right?
Correct.
It'll be tagged on Instagram. But you can also probably just find her by saying Lexy Hearn. Hi, Mr. North Dakota. I love you. Sorry, I have like 2 live streams going up. But yeah, I think that's about it. And we're going to wrap up for today. Is there anything else you would like to leave people with, Lexy?
I want to say, first off, thank you, Angel, for having me. I tell her this all the time, but I've admired her for a couple years now. And when I found out we'd be competing at the same pageant this summer, I was like, Mom, you'll never guess. She was like, what? I was like, don't you remember? I like all these random title holders. I'm like, Mom, this person's so cool. It's great. And then if you are an American like myself, I don't know much about other countries. My whole shtick is eco-friendly death practices. So look into what your area has available. And if you are in the best state, New York, write to our sweet, sweet governor and be like, hey, girlfriend, let's legalize human composting.
Yeah. And after we end this, I have something to say to you about that as well. So that was Lexy Hearn. You'll probably see her again because we are working on something together. But that'll wrap it up for today. I just wanted to get in and give a quick reflection on my thoughts about COP27. So I hope all of you enjoyed that.